Good day. Thank you so much for joining us. We're in a brand new series based on the book of Ecclesiastes found in the Old Testament. So go ahead and turn there now because we're going to be in there for the next 5 weeks. We're very excited about this. We're titling this series A Philosophy for Life, a Biblical Worldview. So thank you for joining us, and we hope that you can engage with us and let us know what God is calling you to for those next steps in your life. So the year's 1999. Mr. Rogers is in this huge auditorium, and he's about to receive an award for Television Hall of Fame. He's had all of these presenters come through and just shower him with praise, and he's just been reacting so humbly and so beautifully as Mr. Rogers has always done. But right before he is to get up to speak, a guest comes out. This quadriplegic boy who had once appeared on his show when he was 5 years old. So Jeff Erlanger, this quadriplegic boy, wheels himself out there and he stands at the podium, and then the camera cuts to Mr. Rogers, and immediately we get another one of those over-the-top Mr. Rogers reaction. His jaw drops to the floor. He stands up. He ignores all the etiquette of what you're supposed to do at an awards ceremony. He doesn't take the time to go around to the side, go up the stairs, and begin his speech. He leaps up in joy, jumps onto the stage at the age of 70, and gives this man a big hug, his friend that he hasn't seen in a long time. And then we hear Jeff's opening line at this event, and it's one of the most beautiful moments in television history. Watch this.
Please welcome Jeffrey Erlanger.
It is I'm so glad to see you. Oh, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Oh. What a surprise.
It's an honor to be here tonight, to be part of your this proud moment. You know, when you tell people that it's you I like, we know that you really mean it. And tonight, I want to let you know that on behalf of millions of children and grown-ups, it is you that I like.
So after Mr. Rogers finally takes the podium and he grabs the microphone and he begins his speech, he says something that is absolutely profound. He says, life isn't cheap. It's the greatest mystery of any millennium. And we agree with that. Life isn't cheap. It is this great and beautiful mystery that we're always striving for answers for. We want to understand it. We want to know what place we fit into this. Luckily, Ecclesiastes wrestles with this subject over and over again. And it tells us that your life and your story matters. And if you're here this morning, I believe it's probably because you agree with that. You know that your life matters. You know that your story can have an impact on the world that we live in. And you want answers to that mystery. How do I fit into this world that is around me? What is my role? How do I find significance in meaning when everything around me feels so chaotic and pointless? So what truly matters? What will be my impact? For the next 5 weeks, we're going to be examining that very question in the book of Ecclesiastes. This book is part of the wisdom literature that's found in the Old Testament. And if I was going to be honest with you, the wisdom literature is absolutely my favorite genre of biblical literature because it's so practical. It gives us so much divine knowledge to be able to understand the world around us that you can't really engage with it too much. And if you've read the book of Ecclesiastes before, you'll notice that there's nuggets of truth that is found below the surface every single time you read and engage this book. Psalms deals with the faithfulness of God, and it proclaims his glory over and over. Proverbs gives advice for daily living. But then there's Ecclesiastes, and the preacher that we find in this, or the teacher, or Solomon, is at the very end of his life. And this is King Solomon, the son of David. He is built off of his father's success, and he has this mighty kingdom. He's built the temple that his father David had been yearning to build during his reign in his life. And it seems like he had absolutely everything at the end of his life. But when we read Ecclesiastes, we see someone who is just looking around trying to find significance under the sun. And this book is his deathbed reflection on the life that he has observed and all of this wisdom that he has gained. So let's get with it. We're going to begin in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, beginning in verse 1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness, a man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. So when we remember that this is Solomon's life work, that he's analyzing everything that he's done, all of this good stuff that he's seen, this unique wisdom, that it was this gift from God, and we see this opening chapter, it seems pretty dark and pretty hopeless. You may be discouraged already, but stick with us a little bit longer because it gets worse. He says his life's work, it's vanity. The rising and the setting of the sun, weather patterns, new generations. He calls it weariness. Human industry, innovation, creation. He says that there is nothing new under the sun. He gives this idea that we forget past history and we think the only thing that's relevant is in this moment. But Solomon says that all of this is nothing new under the sun. You'll hear Solomon continue to develop this theme of under the sun. What he's referring to is his earthly wisdom that was a gift from God. All of these things that exist around him, he has this unique ability and vision to understand how it works and moves. But Solomon's first observation sets a curious tone. Day-to-day life is vanity. It's weariness, and there is nothing new under the sun. And we can apply the teachings of Solomon so far. I've worked in my father's mechanic shop. I've worked at a coffee shop, a tire shop. I was security at Johnson Bible College. No idea how I got that job. And I've worked at 3 different churches. And do you know how many of those places have had to close their door when I left? None of them. A new person comes in and it keeps moving and cooking. So Solomon is correct. There's absolutely nothing new under the sun. There's been pandemics in the past and there will be pandemics in the future. We will have elections and we will believe that whoever we elect is the most important person. He's going to be the savior of our country and everything's going to be wonderful. And we'll also believe that the other person is the devil and will destroy everything. And then 4 more years, we will do it again. The exact same dance as we've done in the past. Tomorrow the sun is going to rise, and we will do that same dance again. This truth will lead you into either depression, or it'll begin with us asking the question, so what is significant? Where can we find meaning? What is new? Where is there hope, and where is there joy? Solomon isn't there yet, though. He continues to develop this thought that everything under the sun is meaningless. And then he transitions to his greatest gift that he had ever received. In 1 Kings chapter 3, we find Solomon as a young child, and he's having this dream. And in this dream, God encounters him. And God says, I'll give you anything that you want. And Solomon says, My father, King David, was such a good king. He followed you with his whole heart. I just want to be a good king. Give me the wisdom to be able to guide my father's kingdom when I take over his role. Scripture says that God was completely impressed with his response and his humility. So he didn't just bless him with the wisdom to be able to rule the kingdom, but he gave him all of the wisdom that exists under the sun. God gave him this unique ability and power to see the world and how it moves and operates the same way that he does. And Solomon was internationally famous for this vast wisdom. It provided him every material item that he could ever imagine. Let's listen to his reflection on his own under the sun wisdom, picking up in verse 12. Ecclesiastes 1:12 through 18. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity, and a striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who are over Jerusalem before me. And my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge, and I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this also is but a striving after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. Solomon, a child that's been living in the shadow of the greatest king that Israel ever had, he encounters God in a dream, and he asks for one thing. He says, God, give me wisdom so that I can govern correctly. God gives him more wisdom than he can even handle. And he builds this amazing kingdom, even bigger and even larger than his father. He becomes the richest man on earth. He has countless wives and concubines. He builds the temple that his father had been dreaming about building. He has international respect. But at the end of his life, when he reflects over all of these things, he starts to begin to call them vanity. He says that they're weariness, that there's nothing new under the sun. And under the surface of this, it feels like Solomon is looking for significance and meaning that isn't found in the material. Things that aren't found on this earth. All these things that we spend our life and our time on, Solomon looks at it and he reflects and he says, this doesn't bring me joy. This isn't what makes my life significant. And as Ecclesiastes builds, we start to see a little bit of an attitude change as he looks and he reflects on what truly matters. That clip we saw earlier of Mr. Rogers' Hall of Fame induction into the Television Hall of Fame happened 2 years before he retired. And it was 4 years before he passed away with stomach cancer. And the more and more that I listen to his speech, the more that it sounds a lot like Solomon. That he's asking that exact same question that he did so many years before that. Where do we find meaning and where do we find purpose in life? How do we live in a way that matters and impacts the world that's around us? But as Solomon began by analyzing earthly wisdom, working at something significant, Mr. Rogers in that speech hits on something that is above the sun wisdom. He hits at some godly wisdom and intelligence, these deeper truths that are spiritual. So after jumping onto the stage and greeting his good friend Jeff that he hadn't seen since he was 5 years old, who's been such a good neighbor, as Mr. Rogers says, he turns and he challenges the audience, and he challenges them to serve all of those that they speak to on a nightly basis or a daily basis from their television shows. He says this, he says, meet the deeper needs of those that watch and listen. And he said, show and tell what the good life is all about. You see, Mr. Rogers, looking back at his life, analyzed what truly mattered. And it wasn't material wealth. It wasn't fame. What truly mattered to Mr. Rogers was his neighbor. Listen to his words. But how do we make goodness attractive? by doing whatever we can to bring courage to those whose lives move near our own, by treating our neighbor at least as well as we treat ourselves, and allowing that to inform everything we produce. As our time comes to a close today, I want to thank you so much for worshiping with us. If you're sitting here and it feels like life is meaningless and you've been toiling under the sun, trying to find purpose and engage with something that really truly matters, we want to encourage you to find that in your neighbor, those whose lives move close to your own. Pour into them, serve them. And at the end of Mr. Rogers' Hall of Fame speech, he challenges everyone in the audience to spend 10 seconds to bow their head and to think of that one person who has served them. We want to give you that challenge right now in this moment. Spend 10 seconds and reflect on who it was in your life that had served you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited about this new series that we're in, trying to find meaning and purpose in life. Today we examined how we can find meaning and how we can find purpose in the way that we serve and love those that are close to us. We would love to hear what's going on in your life. We would love to engage with you. Please follow that link below and let us know what's happening. We also want to give you an opportunity to give sacrificially. You can do that on the link below as well. Now, go love your neighbor.